여러분, 노화는 과연 막을 수 있는 질병일까요? 왜 나는 하루가 다르게 늙어가는데 TV에 나오는 연예인들은 50이 넘어도 그대로인 걸까요? 스탠포드 뇌과학 교수 앤드류 후버만과 하버드 의과대학 데이비드 싱클레어 교수는 노화가 막을 수 있는 질병이라고 말합니다. 미친 소리 아니냐고 말할 수 있겠지만 과학적 근거를 들어보면 매우 흥미롭습니다. 연예인처럼 늙지 않는 삶을 원한다면 영상을 끝까지 시청해 보시기 바랍니다.
Why we age and how to slow or reverse the effects of aging. You will have in-depth knowledge about the biology of aging, which is that aging is not the normal and natural consequence that we all will suffer, but rather that aging is a disease that can be slowed or halted. You're going to learn a tremendous amount of information and practical tools that you can apply in your everyday life. Why is it that having elevated glucose and insulin ages us more quickly? And or why is it that having periods of time each day or perhaps longer can extend our lifespan?
Let's start with what I think was a big mistake, was the idea that people should never be hungry. We live in a world now where there's at least 3 meals a day. So the feeling of hunger, some people never experience hunger in their whole lives. It's really, really bad for them. What we actually found, my colleagues and I, is that when you look at animals, whether it's a dog or a mouse or a monkey, the ones that live the longest, 30% longer, and stay healthy are the ones that don't eat all the time. If you have low levels of insulin and another molecule called insulin-like growth factor, those low levels turn on the longevity genes. But by having high levels of insulin all day, being fed means your longevity genes are not switched on. Your clock is ticking faster by always being fed. It's not as important what you eat, it's when you eat during the day.
What is your protocol for when to eat and when to avoid food?
Well, if there's one thing I could say, definitely try to skip a meal a day. That's the best thing.
Does it matter which meal, or are they essentially equivalent?
Well, as long as it's at the end or the beginning of the day. Well, I'll tell you what I do. I skip breakfast and then I go throughout the whole day as I'm doing right now here with this glass of water here. I'm just keeping myself filled with liquids and so I don't feel hungry. Beware that the first 2 to 3 weeks when you try that, you will feel hungry and you also have a habit of wanting to chew on something. But try to make it through the first 3 weeks and do without breakfast or do without dinner and you'll get through it. Our society is built on comfort. Most countries have enough food and shelter. We can sit down, we don't have to run away from predators very often. And this is a real problem because these longevity defenses that normally would be activated by being cold and hungry and running are lethargic. The body doesn't expend energy to defend itself unless there's a need for it. And modern society is the worst thing. We love comfort, it feels good, but that's the worst thing for long-term health. We need to trick the body into getting out of its comfort zone by doing these things we've talked about. Eating the right foods, eating less often, and as long as we have adequate nutrition, that's what we call it intermittent fasting, that allows the body to turn on these defenses without suffering long-term negative consequences. What's interesting, I find, is that even though we know the fridge is probably full with food, our bodies are not that smart. Our bodies don't get that message, and we can trick the body into thinking, oh my goodness, the fridge is running out of food, or the field or the forest is lacking in food, we better get to hunker down and survive. What are those things? You burn fat, you increase your metabolism, so you've got more energy to run around and find food. You become more alert because you've got to go find more food, and you defend your body against insults, whether it's incoming infections or diseases from within. And that's cool that we can trick our bodies, and it's not that hard. We just need to do the things we're talking about on this podcast.
배고픔을 거의 경험하지 않는 현대사회의 생활 습관이 실제로는 건강에 해로울 수 있다는 사실을 알고 계셨나요? 연구에 따르면 뭔가를 항상 먹지 않는 동물이 더 오래, 더 건강하게 사는 것으로 나타났다고 하죠. 반대로 지속적으로 먹이를 먹을수록 노화 과정이 빨라지는 것이고요. 즉, 노화를 방지하기 위해서는 간혹 찾아오는 배고픔을 두려워할 필요가 없고 오히려 활용해야 한다는 것입니다. 배고픔을 활용하는 단 한 가지 좋은 방법은 간헐적 단식입니다. 하루에 한 끼, 가급적이면 하루를 시작하는 아침이나 하루를 끝내는 저녁 식사를 거르면 노화 방지와 수명 연장에 더욱 도움이 된다고 합니다. 그리고 이 관점에서는 무엇을 먹느냐보다도 언제 음식을 먹고 언제 먹지 않는지가 가장 큰 차이를 만든다는 사실을 기억하시기 바랍니다.
So what are the other things that anyone and everyone can do, should do to live longer?
I think most people don't appreciate is that exercise isn't just beneficial for your fitness and for your vitality. It actually can stop diseases in their tracks. Exercise can slow down cancer. In fact, it can prevent up to 23% of all cancers from occurring. That's true for cardiovascular disease. In fact, it has an even bigger effect on that. 30% reduction just by doing moderate exercise every week. 50 minutes is sufficient, or 3 times a week with 10 minutes. That's a 27% reduction in the rate of aging just by exercising. You can measure biological age now in people. I could take one of your cells, Matt, back to my lab, and we can measure the rate of your aging. It's called the Horvath clock or DNA methylation clock. And when you look at people that have lived a healthy lifestyle, say they've been exercising for the last 30 years, they are much younger epigenetically, according to this clock, than someone who hasn't. So that tells us that very likely that exercise is not just protecting you against cardiovascular disease, it's slowing down your overall rate of aging.
운동이 건강에 좋다는 것은 모두들 아는 사실이겠지만 실제로 노화를 늦추고 질병을 예방할 수 있다는 사실도 간과해서는 안 됩니다. 규칙적인 운동은 모든 암의 최대 23%를 예방하고 심혈관 질환 위험을 30%까지 낮출 수 있다고 하죠. 주기적으로 적당한 강도의 운동을 꾸준히 하거나 적게는 일주일에 3번, 각 10분씩만 운동을 해도 건강과 노화 방지에 큰 영향을 미칠 수 있습니다. 과학기술이 발달함에 따라 이제는 호르바스 시계 또는 DNA 메튜라 시계를 통해 사람의 생물학적 나이를 측정할 수 있습니다. 규칙적인 운동을 병행하는 건강한 라이프스타일을 유지하는 사람은 그렇지 않은 사람보다 생체 나이가 훨씬 더 젊습니다. 따라서 운동은 특정 질병으로부터 몸을 보호할 뿐만 아니라 전반적인 노화 속도를 늦춰주죠. 결론적으로 노화를 방지하고 늦추려면 배고픔을 받아들이고 간헐적 단식을 실천하며 규칙적인 운동을 생활에 접목시켜 보시기 바랍니다. 이 간단하지만 강력한 습관들을 생활에 실제로 접목하면 더 건강하고 장수하는 라이프스타일로 삶을 영위할 수 있습니다. 다음 영상에서 뵙겠습니다. 초월의 숲이었습니다.